welcome to Scorched Earth and general reading for the sign of Aries, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of July. I hope you are well. I'm using the Tarot of the Abyss for you today. I know these readings are late. Thank you for waiting for me. It's greatly appreciated. So let's crack straight on with you, Aries. Can I have 3 cards for Aries? There we go. There's the first card. We have the King of Swords in your recent past. We've had 2 cards fall out to the side, and I don't generally take those cards. I like them to jump rather than to fall. But interestingly, it is the 7 of Pentacles and it is the 8 of Cups. Now, I want to show these to you because I think that they're relevant, but I am going to put them back in here. This talks about a situation that is less than ideal, and your cogitations and ruminations on how it is that you might rectify that. And the 8 of Cups talks about a leaving behind of something, right? It's an understanding that this situation does not hold any emotional fulfillment for you, and it, likely often speaks of the act of walking away. Although, with it being the 8 of Cups rather than the 6 of Swords, it's not a physical removal necessarily of yourself from a situation. More, it tends to be the emotions that are associated with it, right? Refusing to allow them to affect you any deeper than they already do. In fact, reducing the effect that they are having on you. So let's have a look at your current energy, please. Current energy for Aries. There it is. We have the 10 of Swords. Now, in the Tarot of the Abyss, there are 2 depictions of the 10 of Swords, as indeed there are 2 depictions of the 3 of Swords. And this is an alternate one. The first one is that which you would usually expect, but this one is really quite different. This is a really beautiful energy. We're going to get into that in a minute. The card that fell out to the side is the Moon. It's interesting, I was just musing yesterday when I was doing readings how I had not seen the Moon card coming out for anybody yet. It's there. It's underlying you, and I think that you're probably well aware of that. Let's see what's coming towards Aries, please. We have the Devil. It's come out sideways, though. Now, most readers will tell you that that position means nothing. It's either got to be in the upright or it's got to be in the reverse, but I do tend to pay attention to these cards when they come out sideways, because for me, it talks about not committing to one or the other, right? So it's not yet this and it's not yet this. This is a month where it could go either way for you, and so to that end, it would really depend on the decisions that you make and the approach that you take to whatever your situation is. And I feel like for most of you, that 7 of Pentacles and the 10 of Swords, it is a very difficult situation, right? We're going to get into why the Devil being there is important and how this can either empower or disempower you, depending on what you decide to do shortly. But we've got the 10 of Wands at the bottom of the deck. So I feel like for you, Aries, it's altogether too frequent a reading where I'm having to say the same things, which is that shit is really hard for you at the moment, and it's uncomfortable and it's challenging, and I see what you're going through. Let's get some clarifiers out and we'll talk about this properly in a second. Right. It gives them a good shuffle actually before I get into that. Tell me about the King of Swords, please. Oh, there's the first one. We have the 3 of Wands appearing in the reverse. King of Swords, please. Thank you. And we have the Hermit. It's Virgo energy. Tell me about this 10 of Swords. We have the Knight of Swords. And we have the Sun. It's Leo right there. And then clarifying the Devil, which is Capricorn energy. Oh, thank you. We have the King of Wands in the reverse. And we have the 4 of Pentacles, right. The Nine of Cups is at the bottom of the deck, and I feel like this is probably the furthest thing from your mind at the moment. You know, any card that is numbered 9 speaks to me of you as an individual, whereas 10 has a very collective energy to it. The 9 is just like, what's going on with you? And for me, this talks about taking ownership of your own emotional state. Right now, this is sometimes called the wish card, and it speaks of, you know, great emotional fulfillment and how we feel brilliant about everything. You know, she's got a little you know, smile on her face there as she's looking at all of these cups that she's amassed. You know, it usually gives us an idea of you know, everything just working out the right way. Contentment, I guess. It's not sheer unadulterated joy, but it is contentment. It's a small sense of pride. You know, she's taking these cups out and she's buffing them with a cloth. You know, she's getting the dust off. There's a maintenance there of emotional state. But the cards that we've got sitting behind it are the Five of Wands and the Eight of Swords, and having seen those, that makes a lot more sense of this Nine of Cups, because like I said, this Nine of Cups, as much as you may wish for it, it doesn't feel like it's particularly evident around you at the moment. And then we have this card of very restricted thinking we've got going on here, being kind of mentally trapped by something, and we have the Five of Wands, which can talk about active conflict that you may be in with other people, or it can speak to a level of conflict that you are experiencing within yourself, and there is absolutely no reason why both can't apply at the same time. So when we look at these three cards together, what we've got is your potential for, or even your capacity at this point, to experience all of those lovely emotions that we usually associate with the Nine of Cups, and then how it feels so alienated from you, whether it is because you are in a state of active conflict with other people and this is really, really, you know, taking up all of your energy at the moment, or whether it is you're in conflict with yourself, you don't quite know what to do. You know, sometimes the Eight of Swords feels, it speaks of that feeling where everything is so fucking hard that we just want to sit down on the floor and wait for somebody to rescue us. Now, obviously, that is a mistake, and particularly when you're trying to get to a state of true personal ownership of your emotions here. But the whole thing feels cluttered. Like it feels like everything is jarring at the moment. And the more you try and reach out for the Nine of Cups, the more desperate the need for the Nine of Cups to be there, the more evident its absence becomes. You know, it's feeling kind of cyclical here a little bit. And I do feel like quite a lot of your energy is facing outwards at the moment. You're trying to find time to go inwardly, and we'll look at that in a second. But it feels like there are obstructions, there are obstacles, and those feel very people-related rather than necessarily situational. Like there is a consistent thorn in your side over something, you know, perhaps people are not giving you the space that you need to be able to formulate what it is that your next moves forwards. It's cluttered, and there's just a barrage of stuff. I feel quite on edge as I'm talking here, like there's an anxiety that's trying to crawl up here and sort of grab me by the throat and keep pushing it down. You know, and I feel like that's what you're trying to do here, and it's like trying to focus on being practical, trying to focus on remaining, you know, or reclaiming rather, this sense of emotional stability that seems to be kind of elusive at the moment. And you're holding it all together because you're Aries and that's what you do, but it feels to me like you are being stretched to breaking point in the act of doing this. And it's almost like, will everything just fuck off? Will everyone please just fuck off right now? You know, before we go any further, I do want to point out to you that generally your external world is a reflection of your internal world. And so if you are finding that everything is a little bit claustrophobic, if you're finding that the anxiety is really, really high, if you're feeling like the stress levels are really, really high, trying to control what is going on outside of you is the most counterproductive thing that you can do, right? Because all the work needs to start in the internal place first. Now, I don't think that it would be a bad idea for you to have some space, Aries, anyway, if only to get you to a point where you realise just how seized up everything feels inside, and to give yourself the time and the space to be able to start sifting through that, you know? And maybe some of you have actually done that already, because this first card that we've got here is the King of Swords. Now, this is Aquarius energy. It can sometimes refer to, you know, the professions. So we have accountants and lawyers and doctors and surgeons, judges, you know. Any kind of profession that requires you to put your emotions to one side and judge something purely on the facts. But it can also talk of an energy of making decisions, seeing things very clearly, being able to express yourself very clearly, you know, that kind of thing. And it could be that you are having dealings with lawyers or doctors, or surgeons or judges or something like that at the moment, right? Somebody who would be sitting in some kind of profession, and, you know, what they have to say about something could well be playing a significant role in whatever situation that you find yourself in. Or it could speak to the need to be clawing is the word that I'm getting here, like clawing your way back to some sort of semblance of rationality and reasonableness and all this kind of thing, right? It's always like on a subconscious level, you are really aware that things are not operating the way that they should be within you. But rather than kind of retreating from the world and giving yourself time to kind of process what all of this is, I feel like this King of Swords is almost trying to slap down this rationality and this reasonableness and this, you know, logical approach, and it's not being received in the way that it should be. Now, what is important is to sit here and go, am I actually presenting this as reasonably as I could do? Am I taking into account X, Y, and Z, you know, or am I trying to control this situation so that I don't have to look at my internal space? I think it's possibly a combination of the two, and that's why this would feel very frustrating to you. But we've got an interesting double set of cards here. We've got the Three of Wands and we've got the Hermit. Now, both of these cards speak of travelling in one way or another, right? The Three of Wands in its upright speaks to actions that we take, right? Things that we can do. For me, it's a low-level card of manifestation because, you know, we have those higher level cards, you know, the Lovers, you know, the Magician, things like that, right? But because this is in the minor arcana, this is about the things that you do on a day-to-day level, right? These are your responses to those big energies in the major arcana that come in. It's the way you conduct your life day to day. And we've got here somebody who's, you know, got the wands and they're fucking off. They're going to go and do a thing, right? I've decided I'm going to do a thing. I'm going to go do it, except that it came out in the reverse for you. There isn't really much movement going on outside of you. The movement is going on inside here with this Hermit. Now, being that these have come out underneath the King of Swords, it could well be that you have decided that you need to stop trying to push at the external world, stop trying to, you know, control possibly a situation, enforce your will on a situation, try and convince somebody that they are wrong and you are right, you know, or that they need to do a particular thing and you don't, or you need to do a particular thing and they need to let you, you know. And you've realised all of these things that we've just been talking about for the last 14 minutes right? How actually it's time to retreat. It's time to start going inside instead. And I feel like as I'm talking that actually the latter is true. It's more the realization that you kind of are where you are, and so a conscious decision has been made that rather than trying to affect change outside of yourself, it's time to start going within. It's time to start seeing how you can make a little bit more order of what feels like considerable chaos inside. I would like to pick up another deck. I'm going to go with the Night Sun because it's kind of winking at me here, and see if there's anything else that it has to say about that. Tell me about this. Oof, we've got the Seven of Cups, but it's shown up in the reverse, which is really, really good, because this talks about emotional confusion and illusion and all of those things that often will have us either making really stupid decisions about things and exercising really, really poor judgment, or they just find us fucking lost and we don't really know which way to turn. Like, there's so many options, which one of them is the fucking right one? And because it's cups, it's about emotions, right? Everything is very, very untidy. But it's coming out in the reverse for you, which feels to me like it's absolutely validating what we were talking about there being this conscious decision being made to stop trying affecting things outside of yourself and kind of bringing it in. Like, understanding that there is a lot of chaos, there is a lot of confusion, there is potentially considerable illusion going on in here. And that it's time to sit with those cups and look at them all individually and make sense of what has not made sense. Now, as long as you are doing it in relation to your own personal emotional reactions, that feels to me like it's a very healthy thing. If you are trying to make sense of an event that has happened to you recently, I feel like that you might be on a hiding to nothing with that, right? That's kind of rabbit holing sideways from where you should be looking. And I just want to put that in as a little caution, a little caveat, because some things are just senseless. Sometimes we just can't make sense of things. And I'm thinking particularly about things like bereavement, stuff like that. Like, if you lost somebody who is very close to you and very important to you, and this happened to me when my husband died back in 2005, I kind of went mad for a year and I didn't even notice because I was so busy looking after everybody else and making sure that everybody else was okay. And I threw every ounce of everything that I had into that there was nothing left over for my own personal grief. And that started rearing its head literally about a year later. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Why am I making all of these weird fucking decisions? Why am I doing these things that I've never done before? I spent 2 weeks drinking vodka every night. And I was like, oh, it's okay, it's fine, not treat. And it just hit me in a flash that this is how people become alcoholics, because it numbs the pain. And it scared the shit out of me, because I've got a really, really poor alcohol tolerance, actually, as it happens. I've never been any good at drinking. And yet I was. Suddenly, over the course of 2 weeks, I got really good at drinking. And I was so scared by the thought that I was providing myself with a crutch that it would be very, very difficult for me to get, out from under me later on, particularly when there were so many people who depended on me, that I cut it off, stopped it there, threw all the alcohol out and went, no, never again will I ever go down that numbing road. I'd repressed all of my feelings so hard and focused on everything outside of me that I kind of strayed from the path for just a little bit. But then I don't tend to think that we do stray from our paths, really. I feel like where we go is exactly where we're supposed to go. And so for me, skirting around the edge of that, noticing my own kind of minor psychosis as it was occurring, was enough of a lesson to make sure that I would never go back there again. And perhaps, in future I might have done, had I not skirted that close to it. So a caution, make sure that you're exploring the right thing rather than trying to look for the sense in the senseless. you know, if you can attribute these things to a higher force, a higher plan, a bigger plan, then sometimes that helps, but not always. Sometimes horrible things happen, and it's very difficult to find any kind of justification, spiritual or otherwise, right, that mitigates the pain, because ultimately that's what we're looking for. It's something to mitigate the pain. Sometimes things are just fucking painful and they just fucking hurt, you know. Let's remove this. Thank you. You've got the Four of Wands in reverse. The rug's been pulled out from underneath you, Aries, yet again. Like, how many times does this need to happen? I think at this point, on some level, you're just sick of the fucking drama. You know, you just want things to go back to being relatively straightforward. Because the drama's emotional. It's what you're feeling inside. And as things have as things have escalated outside of you, chaos is kind of crescendoed somewhat. Now, I feel like the way that you're looking at yourself is bearing fruit, because in your current energy we have this beautiful Ten of Swords, and I love this card so much. God bless Anatorian for her interpretation of this, because the Ten of Swords is one of the most challenging cards in the Minor Arcana. In fact, I think all of the most challenging cards are generally to be found in the Swords, and that makes sense because it's the way that our brain deals with everything, right? It's too much thinking can be very detrimental to all sorts of things, actually, when we live from the head rather than from the heart. But this interpretation is hugely beneficial, I think, right? We have this symbol of wisdom, which is the owl, right? Symbol of experience, hard one, right here with this owl. And in the owl's feathers are those 10 swords. You can see them there, right? And we have a chap, older chap. There's lines on his face and there's a beard, you know, he's getting on a little bit. And rather than lying prone on the floor like we usually associate with the Ten of Swords, it's 10 swords literally in the fucking back and just lying and just fucking looking at the dawn and all that sort of thing. You know, he's looking this experience dead in the eye. He's not blinking, he's not turning away from it. There's even a little smile playing on his lips here, because he's meeting his experience, right? And he's meeting his wisdom. He is seeing that there is something quite profound that has gone on here, and it has been difficult and it has been challenging. But there are things that can be learned. There is comfort that can be taken. There is growth. There is maturation. There is evolution that is occurring here in this card. And it's here with the Knight of Swords, Gemini energy, and the Sun card. Now this is quite interesting to have the Sun, which is the most positive card in the tarot, coming out to clarify a Ten of Swords, which is a really difficult card. And particularly here, with this Knight of Swords, the transmission of information, you know, things coming to and fro. And I feel like this transmission of information that we're talking about here is almost, if you will, it's being transmitted by the owl. There's your experience. Here is the wisdom that is available for you from this experience, you know. Like I was saying before, like, you try and find a justification, a reason, some sort of higher spiritual purpose for the pain that you have experienced, like you might well struggle to do that. What you can find is much like I said in that 2-week period when I was fucking drinking every night, and I suddenly realised what I was doing to myself there. Like, not only did I realise that I was numbing my own pain, ergo there must be pain in there that probably needs a look at. But I also developed a level of compassion for people who find themselves in that situation. Like suddenly it's like, wow, people must be really hurting if they are doing that to themselves over and over again, you know, becoming an alcoholic that way. And I was like, holy shit. There's a mindset shift that's going on with you at the moment, Aries. And it's uncomfortable and it's challenging, and it's certainly not bedded down and fundamental and foundational for you yet, but it is happening. Oh, we've got the Ace of Cups and we've got the Two of Wands. There. It seems to me like you're having that moment that I spoke about just then. You know, it's that crossroads moment. I understand what I am doing to myself. I understand how this situation is affecting me. I understand how I could succumb to it. Right? I could absolutely just allow myself to submit to the situation and take the easy route. Or I could look at the way that I'm growing. I could look at how I as a human being am becoming stronger in this experience. You know, it's something that Aries, I think, has in common with Leo quite strongly. I think both of us signs go through this almost rallying against God, right? Rallying against spirituality, rallying against everything, going, right, I understand why things were fucking hard, right? I get it, why this thing's been hard and this thing's been hard. And I understand that I learn lessons through experience. It's a fire sign thing, where we have to experience the thing before we can really truly understand it. But when does it fucking stop? When does it end? When have I learned enough that I am able to just, you know, chibble about in a contented state, polishing my cups every now and again, because those cups that I've worked so fucking hard for actually do belong to me, and I get to buff them with a fucking cloth and keep the dust off them. Like, when does that happen? You know? And I feel like there's a true silent scream that goes out to the universe when we hit that state. And it's so funny because the one word that came through when I was doing the meditation, before I started your reading, was acceptance. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then because I had a brain injury, I just completely forgot, except that it's just popped back into my head now as I'm looking at this here. Like, just in that moment where I could choose to continue drinking, or I could choose to accept that there were things that needed sorting out in here. Accept that I needed to make myself a priority where I had not. Accept that the things that were confusing weren't going to get any less fucking confusing if I ignored them. Was being presented. Here it is, right? This loss of faith and the loss of hope and the silent scream against God, the universe, the source, whatever it is, you know, where you just go, fuck it, stop it. I've had a fucking, I'm sick of being strong. I'm sick of having to be strong. I'm sick of having to pick myself up by the scruff of the fucking neck and doing it again and again and again. When does it end? The shift that's going on with you is a shift away from that kind of feeling. It's a shift away from that silent scream. It's an acceptance. Because the harder you fight against it, the more deeply it cuts when it comes. Now, I'm not saying that you need to walk around expecting everything to be horrible all the time, but accepting that these things happen, and accepting that there is a point to it, even if you don't understand it. I guess that would kind of fall under the under the umbrella of trying to make sense of something, and probably actually ultimately would end up being a form of spiritual bypassing. But I don't know. I feel like it works for me, actually, as it happens. So regardless of whether it is or it's not, it's a thing. There's such a profound sense of acceptance here. And it's, to be honest, it's not about what happens. It's not about those situations that require you to be strong. It's not about hating the fact that that is the way that you learn. It's a gentle acceptance that it is what it fucking is. And that segues beautifully into the next card. And that the Nine of Cups and the Sun, those two things that you want so very deeply, will come to you only by conscious consent, right? I wonder if there's a lot going on here for you, Aries. You're always the strong one. You're always the thoughtful one. You're always the one who, if somebody is in trouble, you will go and pick them up, right? You'll dust them off and you'll say, right, this is what we're going to do. Very, very action-oriented, as fire signs always are, right? You're there with your presence, with your solution-oriented thinking. Here's what we're going to do. It's going to be great. You know, we're going to sort it out. You can probably count on one hand, if you're really fucking lucky, the number of people who come and do that with you. Now, you might feel like that is an indication of where you try too fucking hard and nobody else tries hard enough. But I'm going to gently suggest that what's being highlighted to you here is not only wounds that need healing, we've all got those, but the kind of relationship that you hold with yourself and with Source, or God, or the universe, however it represents you to you. Because for some of you, there has been an enduring focus on the hard, on the struggle, on the things that are difficult. It's not like an Aries to submit to something. It's not like an Aries to accept. Just acquiesce to a situation. But that's learned behavior. Like, that's how you've got life, through life, up until this point. It's with your fire, right? It's with your, get out there first, straight off, do that sort of thing. I feel like you're being asked to do something slightly different. I feel like you are being asked to submit. You are being asked to open up. You're being asked to look at yourself, accept yourself, love yourself, and accept the good stuff. Because I feel like the good stuff's been all too fleeting for you. But is that a question of perspective? I mentioned in, can't even fucking remember whose reading it was. Somebody's, and it was different signs reading, about that thing where, you get pregnant. You'll be like 6 or 7 weeks pregnant, and all of a sudden all you see is just like huge pregnant women everywhere, like, and they're quite far on now, like 25 weeks, like 30 weeks, whatever, and you're like, holy shit, everybody got fucking pregnant at the same time. Rarely is that true. It's just that your mind is kind of attuned to it. Now, you're so used to everything being hard, you're so used to having to be strong for everything, that you've developed a hyper-vigilance to those situations that could potentially require that from you. Hyper-vigilance, not only is it incredibly energetically expensive, is also a very dominating energy. There isn't a lot of room for anything else. There's certainly no room to become attuned to the things that are good and beautiful in your life. There's certainly not a lot of room to look for the things for which you are grateful in your life. There's something quite strong here about having to have been made to stand still, to the point where you want to just throw your head back and scream, to just kind of release what is building up in you here. But it feels to me like it's very purposeful. It seems to me like it's asking you to look at yourself, not just, okay, well, something shit's happened, so it's really obvious that I would feel crap about it, but dig a little deeper. What are you holding on to? What is being triggered in you, aside from the obvious, aside from whatever it is that you've been experiencing of late? Like, the Ace of Cups for me is that point of focus on the potential for good and wonderful things to come into your life. It is allowing your attention to drift that way. It's allowing your attention to drift towards the Nine of Cups and what that looks like, because we've got, you know, emotional stabilization going on there. But it's also allowing yourself to look at the sun and go, if everything was really fucking wonderful instead of really fucking shit like it is now, would I enjoy it? Would I even recognize it for what it was? Or would I be too busy being hyper-vigilant for whatever, you know, great big bear or wolf or, you know, lion is waiting around the corner to fucking try and chew my leg off again? Because if I think if you were really, really honest with yourself, Aries, I think that the hypervigilance is probably the accurate thing here. To wit, you're not going to experience this unless you allow yourself to experience this, right? This is asking for the potential to be released in you. And it's all coming off the back of something that's been really fucking painful for you. Really fucking difficult, but it is pushing you to a place now where decisions need to be made. In some ways, you've been very reactive. You've kind of allowed life to happen at you. It's kind of like a shit thing's happened and you're on it like a fucking dog, right? Just savaging a bone, right? I'm gonna fucking deal with this. It's gonna be a thing, right? But in terms of going out after the things that you want that would actually make you happy, like, where does that fit in? And if you haven't had to go out and find the things that make you happy, have you even recognized when situations are good? Have you even accepted it? Or has the hypervigilance taken over everything else? Like, what's coming towards you is this devil. And this feels actually pivotal. This feels more important to me in this position than if it was there or there, because it tells me that you're right on the edge of making a decision that dictates whether this card turns upright or turns into the reverse. Now, this is feeling trapped, this is codependency, this is toxicity, that is all the unpleasant things that we experience here on this plane. And this is a removal of the fear of those things, right? Fear, no fear. Trapped, released. Because remember what I was saying about illusion and confusion when we were talking about that Seven of Cups here, right? What you're dealing with here is the master of illusion. When the devil comes along, he can convince you that black is white and white is black, you know, because of the veil that he can draw, the confusion, the illusion, what he weaves, you know, what you think reality is compared to what it actually is. But the only way that he gets any power is by you giving it to him. Your consent to feel one way or another way, you give. But I'm not sure that you've realised that that's what you do. I don't think that's what you realise, that that's what you can do, ultimately, actually, Aries. Because there's the other illusion, right? The illusion that the devil pulls is making you think that you don't have a choice, making you think that you are stuck, you are trapped, you cannot effect change in any sort of way. This is what it is and it's all shit. I mean, it also talks about, you know, the kind of abuses that we engage in to numb ourselves. That's very devilish behavior right there. So, you know, drink, drugs, anything like that, anything that numbs you, it's escapism. Now, you have a decision to make. And when I said right at the beginning that it would either empower you or disempower you, I was absolutely certain about that, right? Because if you allow the devil to continue to make you think that you have no power in this situation, that you are literally just at the whim and mercy of the fates and everything, you know, continuing the hyper-vigilance, then the devil turns up in the upright. If, however, you realize lots and lots of critical things, like everything that we've just been talking about there, and you choose not to allow the devil your consent to do whatever it is, then he loses all of his power. He has nothing on you anymore. Now, I'm not saying that the situation that you're in right now will suddenly magically become better, because it won't. You know, everything needs to be processed, and if things are still really hard, well, they may well continue to be pretty hard. But the way that you show up to deal with it might be slightly different. And this hypervigilance that I'm talking about, that anxiety, that kind of tenseness, you're just waiting for something, or what's the next fucking thing to go wrong? It's using up your spoons, Aries. It's no wonder that your internal space feels cluttered. And there's things clattering around. It's like, I'm getting the same feeling that I get when somebody drops a fucking saucepan or a saucepan lid in my kitchen on a tiled floor. It puts me in fight or flight mode, believe it or not. Like, I'm really, really bad with sudden noises, which I understand from something that I saw on Instagram yesterday. It's actually trauma response. You know, that easily startled kind of thing. I am really easily startled. But loud noises, like, really, really upset me. Unexpected loud noises like that. I feel in the same state, on the edge of the same state there, thinking about that as I do thinking about your internal space. And that's hypervigilance. You allow yourself to be wound up by circumstances, situations, other people, to the degree that you are constantly on the edge all the fucking time, and it probably takes very, very little to send you over the edge. And that is so exhausting, Aries. It's so exhausting. This whole reading is about asking you to kind of pull this back, come back to you. Make the decision, because it's being presented to you this month. Which way are you going to go? We've got the King of Wands, which is a Leo card, in the reverse, and we've got the Four of Pentacles. Now, some of you might be dealing with a Leo, and if you are, commiserations, because it does not seem like they are acting in their light side. We've got a Leo that could be potentially acting quite shadowy, and that's not a fun thing. None of the signs being in their shadow aspect is a fun thing to deal with. And we've got the Four of Pentacles. Now, the Four of Pentacles is quite interesting, because usually it talks about how we clamp down on things, right? Whether we're, you know, hoarding money, or whether we're clamping down from an egoic point of view. So, like, we need to be right about something, right? And we're like a dog with a bone. We're not going to let go of this. Like, they need to apologise to me. They need to admit that I was right, or they need to stop doing this, or they need to start doing this, you know, something like that. Really tense on it. Like, this becomes the hill that we're going to fucking die on, right there. But this one's slightly different, because what we have is a woman who is not clamping down on something. In fact, Three of the Pentacles are just sort of by her side, and she's got one in her hand, and she looks like she's in the act of giving that pentacle. This is usually the way that we interpret the reversed Four of Pentacles right there. It's like allowing things to move, allowing the energy, more importantly, to move, allowing what is stuck and stressed and repressed within you to actually just be released. And just hand it over, just go and let it go. You know, for those of you who are not dealing with a Leo, do feel like it's talking about the fact that you need to decide what you are, everything that we've talked about, you need to give considerable thought to before you start to move, before you start to take any kind of action externally to you, right? The King of Wands is active fire, it's very doing energy, but it's showing up in the reverse. It's like no movement here. Like Aries tends to act first, think later. And do feelings ever really get a look in there? Possibly not, right? This is a feel first, think about it, then act. We've got a kind of cautionary word appearing here. Yes. Yeah, we've got the Five of Cups, card of grief, card of loss, but more importantly, a card of focusing on the wrong thing, allowing yourself to be completely consumed by something when actually your attention should be over there. Okay. Three of Wands and the Two of Cups. I mean, there's the Ten of Cups at the bottom of the deck here, and I do feel like for a lot of you this is related to people. I don't think it's related to situations. You know, this is not you having a war with a gas supplier or, you know, something like that. This is strictly interpersonal, strictly relationship based, actually. And that, it seems to me, is where we do all of our learning. You know, it is those experiences that cause us to grow more than anything else in the world. And it's being highlighted here for you. Where are you holding on to something that can be released? Right? Whether or not it's referring to a Leo, right? Where are you focusing on the wrong thing? Are you rabbit holing sideways to avoid looking at your own pain? Possibly. I think that that's the case. We've got this Three of Wands here, which, you know, has already occurred for you. It's already appeared, rather, at the beginning of the reading here. But in the Night Sun, it's really, really interesting because it's got an eye in the centre, which is closed. Where are you acting to avoid looking at this Five of Cups? And this Two of Cups? What relationship is really, really important to you that is triggering the shit out of you at the moment, right? Is that the relationship that you lost, or are you dealing with what remains right here? You get to choose this month whether you take the left-hand path or the right-hand path. It's as simple as that. This month feels to me very, very critical for you, both in terms of self-awareness, situational awareness, emotional awareness, but also in terms of where you're going to end up at the end of it, right? Now, I know you're very feisty, I know you're very fiery, I know that you are, you know, primed to take action, to try and control a situation, to try and do all of these things. But there's something much gentler that is being asked of you here. Not easier, it's absolutely not easier, but it's very inward. It is self-examination, it is consideration of your emotions. I mean, we're in Cancer season at the moment, and I don't know about you, but like every year it affects me in exactly the same way. I get very contemplative. I do think about my emotions. I get kind of lost in them sometimes. more I try and fight it, the worse it gets. There's a similar sort of energy that's going on here with you. And it's like, look at your emotions. What are you not looking at? Where are you acting for the sake of acting? So that you're, completely exhausting yourself, but also, more importantly, leaving no room to look at what it is that is actually hurting you right now, Aries. Because I think that you've been looking everywhere else but at this thing. And this month dictates which direction you go in, whether the devil turns in the upright or into the reverse, It is really important. So making some space for yourself, treating yourself with compassion no matter what comes up, is going to be really, really important. Now, I'm going to go over to Vimeo. We're going to pull this apart a little bit. If you would like to join me over there, you are very, very welcome. The link is down in the description box. Also, if you're on Patreon, you can see all of the extended content for no extra costs. We'll just throw that in there, right? Every single sign that I've read for this month has had a similar kind of thing. Like this month, for some reason, is really, really important. Oh, interestingly, today is the 13th of July. We have the Capricorn full moon tonight. Capricorn card. Yeah, full moons being associated with release and all those kind of things, right? Might be worth a thought. What can you release? What can you take your attention from? And where can you redeploy? Because it needs to go within here. I'm absolutely certain of that. If you're not interested in the extended, that's absolutely fine. Just know that your suffering is not in vain. It is taking you somewhere. If you can build up the trust to allow yourself to be taken in that way, you're gonna have to submit in some way or another, Aries. Or not. You can choose to not submit. You can choose to continue to fight. But I do feel like that's going to cause further issues later down the road. So it's just something to be aware of. Right. Know that I love you all very, very much. I'll see you soon.